Highway 29 flowed beneath the wheels like a dark river of shimmering tar. It was 21:47, late September, and the humid warmth of the vineyards still lingered in the air, mingling with the spicy scent of fermenting Cabernet. Inside the black Rolls-Royce Cullinan, muted luxury reigned, cream leather, palisander inlays, a blue glass bar. Richard Hart, a wine magnate and my current employer, decided to take the wheel himself. I want to show off in front of the sommelier, you know, driving my toys personally. He drove confidently, right elbow on the armrest, wedding ring glinting in the light of oncoming headlights. Noah Reyes, sat behind him, in the companion seat. The bodyguard's habit hadn't gone anywhere. And to my left, on the deep rear sofa, sat his wife, Savannah. The first thing you always notice about Savannah Hart is her aroma: jasmine, fig wood, and a tiny hint of muscat, like a coutureur's secret signature. The second is how she sits, knees to the side, ankle on knee, the gesture of a confident queen who knows where the center of the universe is. Her dress, silk the color of ripe merlot, clung to every curve as if the fabric itself succumbed to the gravity of her body. We had left St. Helena only 15 minutes ago. At first, Savannah was silent, gently swaying a glass of wine from the minibar. Ruby reflections danced above her wrist. And then, one lightest movement, the back of her hand touched my thigh. I flinched, taking it for an accident, but the hand didn't move away. On the contrary, the fingers, cold from the glass, slid a little higher, as if checking if I was alive. My heart beat a blow that any accelerometer could have heard. But Richard chatted about the new line of Pinot Noir, not looking in the mirror, the road ahead, the numbers of revolutions, his only focus. The highway at night is the best tasting room, he said cheerfully, increasing the volume of jazz on the panel. But not for the taste that pulses now, flashed through my mind. Meanwhile, Savannah leaned closer, so that the warm whisper hit straight into the eardrum. Remember that time when the suit was too tight? Did I imagine it, or was it really impressive? The fingers continued their journey. Loudspeaker, hey, if you already feel the adrenaline rush, put a mental like, subscribe to my confession, it will get hotter, and this is just a warm-up. I arched my back as if looking for a more comfortable position, but in fact, I was trying to make myself breathe. In the rearview mirror, you could only see the top of Savannah's head, nothing suspicious. Richard turned on cruise control, and enthusiastically explained how the tannin saddle is replaced by notes of tobacco on the 45th second of aeration. At that moment, she quietly threw her head back as if tired. And her knees smoothly parted. The silk of the dress, like water, slid above the middle of her thigh. The salon became 10 degrees warmer, although the climate control showed a steady 70 F. Is everything okay, sweetheart? Richard asked, not taking his eyes off the highway. A little hot, she replied softly. I'll open the window in the back. The click of the glass, a rush of coolness, and with it, the intensified aroma of grape dust. Savannah raised her glass, took a sip, and, as if by accident, ran her finger along the rim to a drop. Then the same finger slid along the inside of my wrist. I realized, the line is now. Saying stop is destroying everything. Saying yes is entering a game with fire that burns quietly, but scorches to the bone. She leaned over again, her lips touching my earlobe. Do you see the road sign exit 6? After it begins a tunnel. There is poor mobile reception there. Will you give me a hand if I pretend to have lost my ring? My mouth went dry. Mrs. Hart, I whispered, this is a bad idea. Then it's a perfect tasting. Her smirk was as sweet as late Icewein, but with a peppery aftertaste. Richard switched the headlights to high beam, the tunnel was approaching. When the streetlights became sparse, Savannah let go of the glass, and in the dark mirrored hatch on the ceiling, her hand was reflected, stubbornly rising up my leg to the belt. The car dove into the tunnel, the radio crackled as if covering our sin with noise. My world narrowed down to two sounds, hoarse jazz and my own pulse. There were 43 miles left to San Francisco. And it seemed to me that eternity lay ahead, under the hands of a woman whose crown is made of risk, in a car driven by a man who has no idea what his queen is doing on the back throne. Are you still here? Then fasten your seatbelts. The next mile will show how fast desire can accelerate when someone who shouldn't be pressing the pedal. People think that luxury is freedom. In fact, it is most often a perfectly decorated cage, where each gilded bar is a condition for survival. A month ago, I stood under the portal of the Hart Estate mansion, while the automatic gates closed with a sound as if the safe lock itself said welcome. The vineyards stretched behind the house to the very horizon. The air buzzed with sweet yeasty dust. May I see your driving hours, Mr. Reyes? Mrs. Fraser, the personnel manager, studied my resume over her glasses. I handed over the folder. On the last page, an extract, 6 years behind the wheel of military MRAPs in the sand instead of highways. Reliability, she nodded. Mr. Hart values those who don't ask questions at high speeds. The interview took place in the tasting room, marble, copper, a barrique of French oak, where the wine slowly gives up tree by tree. That's where the first reflection of Savannah flickered. Her shadow slid down the glass wall like a stain of late Merlot. I didn't even see her face, only the smooth curve of her shoulder, and felt a slight adrenaline rush, as if someone had thrown an invisible seatbelt strap over my chest. An hour later, the contract was signed. The salary, sweet as a late ice wine sibling's fruit drink, a strict wardrobe, a black Tom Ford set, and one line in fine print. All client conversations remain confidential under penalty of civil litigation. Then I didn't know that the hottest conversation would mainly be the rustle of silk and the sound of unbuckled belts. Savannah Hart was not born in a golden cage. She learned to decorate any cage so that gold was considered her calling card. Once, she curated art projects in Santa Fe, live monastic frescoes, light installation exhibitions. But marriage to Richard turned her into a showcase decoration of the wine business. Photo sessions by oak barriques, covers of Wine Spectator, the annual Harvest Queen Ball. The paintings in her private gallery were not hung in golden frames, but in scandalous ones, works by Lane, Taylor Wood, Hamilton, women who photograph themselves naked to prove that skin is just as much a frame as gold. Savannah showed them only to the chosen ones. The estate dozed during the day, crickets, sprinkler heads, the quiet rustle of grape leaves. At night, glowing paths, automatic jasmine aroma, so that the owners feel like guests in a 5-star hotel. And there was no storm anywhere. Richard and Savannah's marriage knew the perfect serving temperature, but not the splash. A week after my hiring, a short trip to Sonoma was planned, Richard, to a meeting with investors, Savannah, to a spa hotel to wait out the men's conversations. I drove up to the gate at exactly 9 o'clock. Richard came out first, busily called someone on the go, and disappeared into the house for documents. Savannah appeared later. Cream shirt dress, through which the shadow of nipples could be guessed, expensive aviator sunglasses hid her eyes. She opened the back door, looked in, and closed it. Do I really have to sit behind the partition like the First Lady at a parade? Velvet voice, but with a sly wrinkle of irony. This is protocol, Mrs. Hart. She walked around the body, clicked the front passenger door, and was already seated while I tried to object. Her knee touched the steering wheel. Now, I am the client of your attention, she whispered, not taking off her glasses. In the rearview mirror, I saw how the rings on her fingers sparkled as she smiled. Her thigh pressed against mine. I felt a slight tingling in my cheek, how the skin reacts when the mind orders don't react. For half an hour, we drove in silence, the radio rustling lo-fi jazz. At the traffic light, Savannah took off her glasses. I know you were looking. I tried to remain professional. Professional. She drew out the word as if tasting it on her tongue. That's sad. I like to hear men stop being professionals. A truck with grape boxes passed in the neighboring lane. Savannah stroked the edge of my fingers, as if by chance. The light turned green, I pressed the gas, and the engine roared louder than my pulse. Loudspeaker. If you want to know what can break the armor of a professional faster than an emergency scream, press the imaginary like, stay on the line. Further, the alcohol is stronger. At the spa hotel, she insisted that I accompany her to the reception. The marble lobby smelled of eucalyptus on the ceiling. A glass chandelier reflected our silhouette, a tall stooped veteran, and a woman walking, as if on a podium, a contrast that would make the mirror panels steam if they had lungs. See you at 6, I nodded. Or earlier, if I get bored, she corrected, leaning unexpectedly close, so that her lips touched my cheek. The way back was lonely, but the scent of jasmine did not fade from the salon, as if the perfume had settled in the upholstery. I caught myself touching the steering wheel where her palm had touched, as if electricity remained there. The day passed. At 6 o'clock sharp, I was again standing at the entrance. She came out, her hair wet after a head massage, the spa center's robe replaced with a strapless black top and loose culottes. Over her shoulder, a bag she didn't even think of closing. Halfway to the mansion, she leaned against the side panel, turned her head. You know, Noah, sometimes cages make the pillows too soft so that their prisoners don't feel the bars. I didn't know what to answer. There was more confession in that phrase than in any confidential conversation in a year of service. The traffic light turned red. She reached for the bar behind, took out a mini bottle of Chardonnay, unscrewed the cap, took a sip straight from the neck. Will you drink with me? She offered a second one. I don't drink on duty. And if I order you to? A smirk near the neck of the bottle. A sedan honked behind. The light turned green. I pressed the gas. The gearshift handle seemed hot. When we drove into the estate, Richard was already standing at the main entrance with a tablet, talking on speakerphone. Savannah waved to him like a schoolgirl to her dad. He smiled, not even noticing that she was sitting in the front. While I parked the car in the garage, she lingered. Do you think about me off the road, Noah? The question stuck like a splinter, not painful, but unforgettable. I remained silent, there were too many answers, and none were safe. She didn't insist. Just got out, the silk of the top slid over the warm metal of the door. Before closing it, she leaned in and left a gaze that was redder than any mellow. Remember, wine opens up in the air. And people, at risk. The door clicked. In the silence of the garage, the smell of exhaust and jasmine intertwined, as if announcing a new blend, adrenaline blank. I sat, holding the steering wheel for a minute, too. Until the heart came out of turbulent mode. Are you still here, reader? Then pour some invisible Chardonnay into the glass. The night is just beginning to cool down, but the thermometer of passion will show boiling before dawn. The next trip will not just be a ride, it will become a ritual where they lose not only professionalism. And yes, mentally, like if you feel the steering wheel trembling in your palms. Risk is a highway without guardrails, and we are just picking up speed. There are tastes that only reveal themselves in the shade, a slight bitterness of fear, a note of salt on the lips, and a long aftertaste of what if. The balcony of City Hall in San Francisco glowed like a glass of Prosecco. You could hear the crunch of rhinestones coming from the transport, with guests of the auction of 7 miles. Richard, in a Tom Ford tuxedo, burgundy boutonniere, disappeared into the flow of presidiums. I parked the Cullinan in the underground, received a valet token, took my usual post at the rear stand. Savannah came out last, A dark plum dress with mesh inserts left more unsaid than revealed. Diamonds in her ears, small, but sparkling, as if they knew something personal about everyone. "Will you be back by midnight?" she asked Richard. "Longer," he smirked. "The lots are worth millions, and $1 million is a patient matter." When the elevator took the owner away, Savannah smiled at me in the reflection of the doors. "And you? Are you patient?" Her voice was like a popped cork, a quiet clap, followed immediately by a hiss. 018. The lobby speakers announced Lot 57 sold. The hall exploded with applause. I waited by the car. The underground floor echoed with the hum of air conditioners. The headlights of rare cars slid along the walls, light, shadow, light, shadow. Savannah came alone. Her heels clicked, almost tapping out Morse code, SOS. "My husband is delayed," she threw, stroking her wrist as if her pulse had jumped out there. "Says there will be an after-party with investors." She opened the back door, sat down, and took a glass of champagne from the bar. But instead of closing, she tapped on the window, ordering with a gesture, "Come to me." Inside the limousine, it smelled of slightly steamed leather and her jasmine, which had already become my personal hypnosis mixture. "Will you sit down?" She patted the seat next to her. I'm still proud when men next to me look better than the guards. I made a circle, a classic chauffeur's move, but instead of the cabin, I opened the passenger door. My heart was pounding. When I sat down, she pressed the partition closing button. The glasses slid apart, cutting off the whole world. "Are you nervous?" Savannah took a sip, the bubbles hissed at her lips. "I am responsible for safety. Today, I am your only safety," she whispered. She took off her shoes, stretched out her legs, her bare toes touched the seam of my trousers. I shuddered, as if the safety catch clicked. The salon light was dimmed, but enough to see how the artery pulsed on the knees of the dress. "Tell me no," she smiled, leaning in. The words got stuck in my throat. Her palm found mine, warm, moist. She placed my hand on her thigh, leading it under the mesh insert. "No," she repeated, lowering her chin. I exhaled, "Savannah," and immediately realized, for the first time, I called her without misses. She ran my fingers up, skin, lace, more skin, until she reached the edge of the silk underwear. Under the fingers, warmth and sweet moisture. "Do you feel? This is not wine. This is me." Loudspeaker, if at this moment your pulse has broken quality control, mentally press like. Believe me, the fabric is now as tight as the nerves. I tried to move away, but she had already pulled the lace aside, directing my palm. "Stay," her whisper trembled. "I want someone to see me." She faltered, "Us like this." Her fingers slid inside, hotter than the desert air where I once served. She arched, her teeth on her lip, to make no sound. In the semi-darkness, I heard my own breathing, sharp inhales and short exhales, like before a shot. When her thigh trembled, she pressed my palm harder. The body under the fingers tensed and crumbled in a wave, a quiet sigh, similar to a sob without tears. Savannah leaned back, her hair scattered across the back of the seat. For a few seconds, only the ticking of the clock on the dashboard. "You're trembling," she said, squeezing my wrist. "I should take you home. You need to understand, from a glance to a touch takes less than a second. Further, it's a matter of habit." She raised her glass, touched the glass rim with her lips, to the first second. I got out, walked around the car, sat behind the wheel, my hands stuck to the leather. In the mirror, I saw her face, her pupils dilated like the gates of the estate when a limousine drives into them. The engine started louder than usual, as if it understood, confidentiality mode is activated. On the Golden Gate Bridge, the fog lay like a blanket. We drove in silence. It seemed that if you reached out, you could erase the taste of risk from your lips, but it grew, as if ink to paper. At the gates of the mansion, the lanterns shone like buds of fire. I got out, opened the door for her. Savannah stepped onto the gravel, tucked a strand behind her ear. See? No one caught us. This is a warm-up. She smiled silently. Next time, I want to try how your voice sounds when you forget about Sir and. She turned, her heels again tapped the code, SOS, but now I knew, she didn't need saving. The scent of her champagne and warm body remained in the salon. I sat behind the wheel, glanced at my hand, my fingers still smelled of jasmine, and something salty sweet that no sommelier describes. Are you still here, reader? Fasten your seatbelts tighter. In the next miles, we will move from an aperitif to the main course, and there the wine will be red not only from berries. And for now, put a like in your mind if you have ever held a secret wet on your fingertips. After all, this is only the beginning of the tasting. Solitude is not just the absence of people. It is the absence of witnesses to whom you can lie about your own thirst. Richard flew to Davos for a 4-day summit of wine investors. The Swiss airliner dissolved into the clouds at exactly 9:12, and at 9:18, a message flashed on my phone, Savannah, need air. Lake Berryessa today. Just the two of us. I'll take a silk robe and silence. You drive slowly. Not a word extra, like a sapper's command. By 11 in the morning, I had driven the Cullinan to the front doors. Savannah came out in a pink robe over a string bikini. A light scent of citrus and jasmine cut through the September air. No bag, no phone. Just her and a thin bracelet on her ankle, as if a GPS tag that no one had activated. 5 miles, and not a single neighbor, she said, sitting in the back as if on a throne. Just watch out for grape trucks, they are blind in turns. Route SR 128 was deserted. I kept it at 45 miles per hour, as she asked. In the cabin, only the bass of the climate control and the light jingle of her bracelet could be heard as she changed positions. By the 3rd mile, she stretched out her legs, her bare toes pressed into the armrest between the front seats. Why does the road seem longer when silence is nearby? She threw lazily. I was silent. In the mirror, I saw how the robe parted on her thigh, revealing a golden strip of skin. Say something so I don't feel like I'm driving alone, she demanded. Your scent has filled the entire cabin, I blurted out. She smiled at the reflection, good answer. Brake by that oak, I want to wake up all the scents. For the 0th time, I said you can't, the brake pedal itself found the floor. Savannah moved to the front. Her hand slid to the back of my neck, pulling me closer. The kiss smelled of grape dust and champagne that wasn't there yet. Loudspeaker, if your screen is slightly steamed up now, mentally press like we've just parked. The Hart Lake House towered over the water with glass walls. The key card clicked, letting us into the sterile white hall where the echo of steps sounded like heartbeats. Savannah went to the panoramic terrace, dropped her robe, the visco swimsuit hugged her body as if drawn instead of fabric. Rule 1, she said, looking at the still smoothness of the infinity pool. Here they are not afraid of water. She stepped into the pool right in her swimsuit. I stayed on the edge, and she surfaced, her hair a dark ribbon to her shoulder. Undress or watch, the choice is still mine. The snap of the buttons on the shirt echoed inside the skull louder than a shot. The water accepted us with coolness, but the temperature rose between the bodies immediately, as if each movement was forged from steam. She wrapped her legs around my waist, her lips at my ear, here. Silence is louder than a scream. I won't describe every degree, it's enough to know that the silence abruptly broke at the moment when the air over the lake trembled, as if the echo of our moans turned the landscape upside down. Rule 2, don't look for a soft spot. She led me to a wooden lounger at the edge of the water. There, under the sun, the skin heats up to the burns mark. She put her heel on my chest, loomed over, traced a path down with her knuckles, see mark. Pointed to her wrist, this is the pulse. It grows when you hesitate. The slap of the belt on the boards, with my teeth, my belt, yes, but there was no rudeness, it was a score of power. She conducted, I breathed strictly to the beat. When the orchestra ended, I leaned back, listening to my heart. It beat like a drum in a march that had already gone beyond the horizon. In the guest bathroom, the mirrors steamed up immediately. Savannah turned to me under the stream of warm water. You know why I need this place. To remember that freedom exists, even on rented territory. She took my palm, pressed it to the rib under her chest, a tiny scar. This is not an operation, this is memory. Once I lived my own way. Then Richard appeared. He invested millions in me, like in a barrel of rare Pinot. Now I am a brand label. And me? I asked, feeling the water wash away the remnants of chlorine and fear. You are a tasting knife, she smiled crookedly. You open the barrel, and the wine can't be driven back. The sun rolled into the lake like a coin into the dome of a church. Savannah fell asleep in the back seat, wrapped in my jacket, her face calm, as if there had been no 3 acts of thirst. I drove carefully. They don't put a speed camera here, too little traffic, but the heart beats louder than radar. At the gates of the estate, I stopped. Savannah woke up, looked at the clock, 19:22. Made it before sunset. Good boy. Before getting out, she held my hand. Rule 3, the last one, no glass should be put back if it has already been raised. We'll drive to San Francisco with my husband, and you'll hold it while I drink. Understood. I nodded. She smiled and added, in a whisper that cuts glass, and on Saturday, we'll try how the night sounds when you scream louder than the engine. The door slammed, leaving me with the aroma of chlorine, jasmine, and a yeasty moment of wine. Loudspeaker, if you've read this far and your hands are still dry, check your pulse. Further, we are entering a speed where the brake is not an option. Press like in your head, and fasten your seatbelts. Ahead is a ride where the husband is at the wheel, and my glass trembles not from the wind. When the rearview mirror reflects not the road, but a secret, every turn of the wheel becomes Russian roulette. Saturday, 1845. Richard Hart exclaimed that he was tired of robot drivers, and would drive the Cullinan himself to the gala dinner of the wine guilds at the Claret Regency Hotel. Noah, sit in the back, distract Savannah so she doesn't get bored, he winked. I know these traffic jams through the bridge. Savannah gave me a quick glance. The game had begun. Her dress, a emerald satin, strapless, with a fold ready to unfold with a breath. The slit, to the iliac bone. We drove off. The music in the speakers, a light blue jazz, even, like Richard's voice, listing investments in the new cellar. Approaching Highway 80, the car slowed down, the traffic was dragging. Savannah moved closer, as if she wanted a migraine. Her knee touched mine. I tried to move, but the child car seat insert, the Harts have no children, just for show, blocked the way. In the rearview mirror, Richard met my eyes. Is everything okay back there? Yes, sir, I replied, and at that moment, Savannah placed her hand on my thigh, quickly, like touching a hot pot. Richard switched the lights to low beam, returning his gaze to the road. Savannah whispered, talk to me, or he'll feel that you're stone. The weather for dinner is clear. I began. Boring, she interrupted and unzipped the tiny zipper on the side of the dress. I saw how the fabric moved away, exposing the inner side of the thigh. Richard had a pompous toast speech planned with their private reserve wine. He took one of the bottles out of the cooler bag right on the go, handed it to me. Will you open it? Let it breathe. At least there will be some use from you lounging in the back seat. I pulled out the cork, handed the tasting glass forward. Richard took it, took a sip, put it in the cup holder. Savannah intercepted the bottle, took a sip straight from the neck. Tears from the sharp tannin appeared in her eyes. A drop of wine rolled down her chest, slowly descending into the hollow. Will you wipe it off? Honey, whisper in the ear. I squeezed the napkin, blotted the skin, a little longer than necessary. Her pupils flared, jealousy worked opposite to logic, it fueled passion, not extinguished it. The traffic stopped at the entrance to the Bay Bridge. Richard cursed, shifted gears. At that moment, Savannah slowly pulled my hand under the slit of the dress. There, no underwear, only wet warmth, pulsing in anticipation. Do you want to have me right here, when he is 3 steps away? I whispered. He has been 3 steps away all my life. I want you to feel this closeness too. The fingers slid inside. Her breathing quickened, but she kept her face calm, only a slightly bitten lower lip betrayed the storm. Richard in the mirror. Savannah, is everything okay? Just tired. Let me drive in silence, my husband, she replied evenly, and her nails scratched my wrist, urging the pace. The cabin filled with the scent of her arousal, light, barely perceptible, but I saw how Richard's pupils narrowed for a fraction of a second. The brain caught the information, did not realize it, let it go. The bridge was passed, Savannah tensed, a wave of tremors passed through her body. I removed my hand, but she squeezed my fingers, held them for a second between her legs, a label of ownership. At that moment, Richard's phone fell out of the panel. A message popped up on the screen, bored, conflict with sponsors, need your signature by 10 p.m., Richard grumbled, okay, I'll stop by the hotel garage. You go by the black entrance while I sign the papers. Savannah smiled with the corner of her lips, of course, dear. We won't get lost. Hotel Claret Regency Garage. Richard jumped out, a courier with a tablet was already waiting there. The door slammed, the elevator door opened. Savannah pulled me inside, pressed the service lounge, 5F button. The elevator roared, the steel walls trembled. She pressed me against the panel, lifted the edge of the dress, sat herself on my belt. Look at the numbers, she whispered, moving rhythmically. When we reach 5, you must enter. Number 3. 4. The elevator jerked, stop. We froze, heart in throat. The doors did not open, the internal unit triggered on some overload. The dark red emergency light came on, casting mocking shadows on the faces. Savannah laughed softly, it seems fate says it's time to double the risk. She turned her back to me, bent the dress, spread her thighs herself, come on. Let this elevator remember what it was built narrow for. I entered, my hands clinging to the handrails, the groan drowned in the metal. The musk of fear and desire filled the cabin. Half a minute later, the elevator jerked again, the number 5 lit up. We fixed our clothes, our breathing was not yet even when the doors opened into the corridor smelling of flowers from the banquet hall. In the mirror in the service lobby, Savannah checked her lips, and I noticed, on the inside of the dress, a scarlet stain of wine, or our madness. The left seam is torn, I whispered. Perfect, she smiled and tucked the fabric so that the diverged thread slightly exposed her thigh. Let the world think that the seam is my only sin. Only then did I notice that on my cuff, there was a dark stain, her mark. Wash it off, she advised, or leave it as a signature. Everyone chooses the degree of confession themselves. Later, in the hall, Richard raised a glass of Ridgeline Pinot, to the honesty of the vine. I met eyes with Savannah, in her gaze, a spark, but no one drinks to the honesty of people, it's more interesting that way. Loudspeaker, if you now feel how your hand squeezed the invisible back of the chair, put a mental like. The finale is approaching, jealousy only warmed up the engine. Further, either it will break loose, or we will. Fasten your seatbelts, the 6th chapter will turn the rearview mirror forever. Chapter 5. Rearview jealousy. When the rearview mirror reflects not the road, but a secret, every turn of the wheel becomes Russian roulette. Route without the right to refuse. Saturday, 1845. Richard Hart exclaimed that he was tired of robot drivers, and would drive the Cullinan himself to the gala dinner of the wine guilds at the Claret Regency Hotel. Noah, sit in the back, distract Savannah so she doesn't get bored, he winked. I know these traffic jams through the bridge. Savannah gave me a quick glance, the game had begun. Her dress, emerald satin, strapless, with a fold ready to unfold with a breath. The slit, to the iliac bone. We drove off. The music in the speakers, a light blue jazz, even, like Richard's voice, listing investments in the new cellar. The first push of jealousy approaching Highway 80, the car slowed down, the traffic was dragging. Savannah moved closer, as if she wanted a migraine. Her knee touched mine. I tried to move, but the child car seat insert, the Harts have no children, just for show, blocked the way. In the rearview mirror, Richard met my eyes. Is everything okay back there? Yes, sir, I replied, and at that moment, Savannah placed her hand on my thigh, quickly, like touching a hot pot. Richard switched the lights to low beam, returning his gaze to the road. Savannah whispered, talk to me, or he'll feel that you're stone. The weather for dinner is clear. I began. Boring, she interrupted and unzipped the tiny zipper on the side of the dress. I saw how the fabric moved away, exposing the inner side of the thigh. Step 1, physical contact confirmed. A strongly smelling glass. Richard had a pompous toast speech planned with their private reserve wine. He took one of the bottles out of the cooler bag right on the go, handed it to me. Will you open it? Let it breathe. At least there will be some use from you lounging in the back seat. I pulled out the cork, handed the tasting glass forward. Richard took it, took a sip, put it in the cup holder. Savannah intercepted the bottle, took a sip straight from the neck. Tears from the sharp tannin appeared in her eyes. A drop of wine rolled down her chest, slowly descending into the hollow. Will you wipe it off? Honey, whisper in the ear. I squeezed the napkin, blotted the skin, a little longer than necessary. Her pupils flared, jealousy worked opposite to logic, it fueled passion, not extinguished it. Step 2, joint ritual with the husband equals novelty of danger. Phalanx under silk. The traffic stopped at the entrance to the Bay Bridge. Richard cursed, shifted gears. At that moment, Savannah slowly pulled my hand under the slit of the dress. There, no underwear, only wet warmth, pulsing in anticipation. Do you want to have me right here, when he is 3 steps away? I whispered. He has been 3 steps away all my life. I want you to feel this closeness too. The fingers slid inside. Her breathing quickened, but she kept her face calm, only a slightly bitten lower lip betrayed the storm. Richard in the mirror. Savannah, is everything okay? Just tired. Let me drive in silence, my husband, she replied evenly, and her nails scratched my wrist, urging the pace. The cabin filled with the scent of her arousal, light, barely perceptible, but I saw how Richard's pupils narrowed for a fraction of a second. The brain caught the information, did not realize it, let it go. Step 3. The smell of betrayal next to the spouse, maximum stake. The glove of jealousy. The bridge was passed, Savannah tensed, a wave of tremors passed through her body. I removed my hand, but she squeezed my fingers, held them for a second between her legs, a label of ownership. At that moment, Richard's phone fell out of the panel. A message popped up on the screen, bored, conflict with sponsors, need your signature by 10 p.m., Richard grumbled, okay, I'll stop by the hotel garage. You go by the black entrance while I sign the papers. Savannah smiled with the corner of her lips, of course, dear. We won't get lost. The scene is ready, the husband drops out, we have a corridor outside the cameras. Elevator without an escape, but an Hotel Claret Regency garage. Richard jumped out, a courier with a tablet was already waiting there. The door slammed, the elevator door opened. Savannah pulled me inside, pressed the service lounge 5F button. The elevator roared, the steel walls trembled. She pressed me against the panel, lifted the edge of the dress, sat herself on my belt. Look at the numbers, she whispered, moving rhythmically. When we reach 5, you must enter. Number 3. 4. The elevator jerked, stop. We froze, heart in throat. The doors did not open, the internal unit triggered on some overload. The dark red emergency light came on, casting mocking shadows on the faces. Savannah laughed softly, it seems fate says it's time to double the risk. She turned her back to me, bent the dress, spread her thighs herself, come on. Let this elevator remember what it was built narrow for. I entered, my hands clinging to the handrails, the groan drowned in the metal. The musk of fear and desire filled the cabin. Half a minute later, the elevator jerked again, the number 5 lit up. We fixed our clothes, our breathing was not yet even when the doors opened into the corridor smelling of flowers from the banquet hall. Dress as evidence in the mirror in the service lobby, Savannah checked her lips, and I noticed, on the inside of the dress, a scarlet stain of wine, or our madness. The left seam is torn, I whispered. Perfect, she smiled and tucked the fabric so that the diverged thread slightly exposed her thigh. Let the world think that the seam is my only sin. Only then did I notice that on my cuff, there was a dark stain, her mark. Wash it off, she advised, or leave it as a signature. Everyone chooses the degree of confession themselves. Changing hands on the wheel later, in the hall, Richard raised a glass of Ridgeline Pinot, to the honesty of the vine. I met eyes with Savannah, in her gaze, a spark, but no one drinks to the honesty of people, it's more interesting that way. Loudspeaker, if you now feel how your hand squeezed the invisible back of the chair, put a mental like. The finale is approaching, jealousy only warmed up the engine. Further, either it will break loose, or we will. Fasten your seat belts, the 6th chapter will turn the rearview mirror forever. Someone is playing truth or dare. Savannah and Richard had a different game, truth and action. If you don't choose for yourself, they will choose for you. 057. The banquet hall Claret Regency washed away the sequins, the waiters collected glasses, as if evidence. Richard ordered me to return to the wheel, it's late, the road is empty. He spoke surprisingly little. Savannah didn't speak at all, looking out the window where the neon city seemed like an alien planet. I felt a slight tremor in the steering wheel, not from speed, from an inexplicable anticipation, as if the tires were rolling over a secret message hidden in the asphalt. In the mansion, he immediately called us to the library. Thick curtains, dim light of a Tiffany lamp, the smell of old oak and fresh jasmine, still trailing from Savannah. Richard turned on the huge screen above the fireplace. A black and white picture from the elevator cabin appeared, my hands on her thighs, the satin of the dress, like a curtain pulled aside. For the sound, her half-strangled whisper and the creak of the handrails were enough. I was speechless. Savannah raised an eyebrow, the surprise was too light, almost playful. Ring camera, Richard explained in an even tone. The hotel's security system. I am an investor, I have access to the archive. I am used to ensuring risk. He paused the frame where my face was distorted between shock and desire. You are a good driver, Noah. And very ardent. It is important for me to know who transports my millions, and my wife. A second of silence seemed like eternity. But he did not throw accusations. Instead, he poured 3 glasses of private reserve, the very one that breathed in the car. Play honestly, and the vineyard prospers. Liars. Rot in the barrel. I am not getting a divorce, Richard said calmly, catching my gaze. I love Savannah, and I love control. You give her a taste of rebellion, I give her a taste of power. I see no conflict. He handed me an envelope. Inside, a contract, confidentiality, a 3-fold increase in salary, plus bonuses for night trips at Mrs. Hart's request. Are you serious? I finally found my voice. I am always serious when it comes to vintage, he smirked. And sometimes a secret is more expensive than a harvest. Savannah took a sip, licked her lips. You see, a tasting knife is needed by both. The glasses clinked. The wine seemed thicker than blood. I folded the envelope, put it on the table. I'm sorry, sir. Your brand can survive any storm. I can't. I'm out of the game. Savannah squinted as if tasting a new aftertaste. Are you sure, Noah? You opened this barrel yourself. That's why I'm closing it before the taste becomes bitter than wine. Richard nodded. And smiled. Honest answer. Pure, without impurities. I respect that. He pushed aside the tablet with the video, as if closing an accounting folder, and pressed delete. The screen was empty. The file was in a single copy, he said. My deals are built on trust. Today you proved that you value it above passion. Maybe one day you'll come back. At dawn, I left the estate. In the cabin of the rented pickup, it smelled of cheap coffee and freedom. I didn't take either the uniform or the gifted watches, only the veteran's equipment, which knows, you have to leave before the explosion. At the edge of the vineyard stood Savannah, barefoot in the dew. In her hands, a key from the Cullinan. She raised it like a glass, last toast. I rolled down the window. For the first time, I noticed how fatigue cut through her smile. Freedom is not the absence of cages, I said. It is the ability to open the door from the inside. She nodded, threw the key. Behind my back, into the dirt. Then drive as you know how, veteran. And I will learn to savor my own bars. I stepped on the gas, the dust of the vineyard rose, covering the rearview mirror. When the cloud dissipated, Savannah was already gone. Half a mile later, the phone beeped, incoming transfer. $2,500, exactly my weekly salary, note, for gas and silence. Sender, Shaw Holdings. I laughed. Ahead, the dawn was spreading, pink, like her robe. But I knew, somewhere between the rows of vines, Savannah, perhaps for the first time in years, cried without witnesses. Loudspeaker, last time if you expected shooting or exposure, forgive me. Sometimes the loudest drama sounds like a whisper of I'm leaving. Put a like in your head if you understood that a secret is valued not by the number of victims, but by the moment when you choose your viewer. I turned off my phone, turned onto an old dirt road, and dissolved in the grape haze. The show is over. But if one day on the radio you hear someone whispering about a silk robe, and a scar under the clavicle, no, not every fire leaves ashes. Sometimes it leaves wine.